My father spent over $200,000 paying for my brother's law degree, tuition, apartment, books, travel, even his expensive suits, everything. And when I asked my father for just $8,000 to finish my own business degree, he looked me straight in the eyes and said, "You need to learn how to stand on your own." I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I simply said, "Okay, Dad." What he didn't know was that 3 years later, I would discover exactly why he had always treated my brother differently. And when I finally confronted them, my brother's face went completely pale, because I had found something they never expected me to see: a bank transfer, a hidden company, and a document with my name on it. My name is Daniel. I grew up in a middle-class family in Pennsylvania with my parents and my younger brother, Michael. From the outside, we looked like a normal family. My father owned a small construction company. My mother worked part-time at a local school, and Michael was always considered the smart one. He was 4 years younger than me, good grades, confident, popular, and, according to my father, destined for greatness. Whenever Michael accomplished something, Dad would tell everyone, "That's my son." But whenever I accomplished something, Dad would simply nod. I eventually stopped expecting praise. I focused on my own goals. After high school, I enrolled in college and started studying business. I worked evenings at a grocery store to help pay my tuition. It wasn't easy. There were nights when I came home exhausted and still had assignments to finish. But I kept going. Then Michael graduated from high school, and everything changed. Michael announced that he wanted to become a lawyer. My father couldn't have been happier. One Sunday evening, Dad called the whole family into the living room. He had a huge smile on his face. "I'm going to make sure Michael never has to worry about money while he's in law school." I smiled. "That's great," I said. Dad looked at Michael proudly. "I've already calculated everything. Tuition, housing, transportation, books." Michael laughed. "You're serious?" "Of course I'm serious." Then Dad said something I'll never forget. "I want my son to have every opportunity." I sat quietly, because at that exact moment, I remembered something. 2 months earlier, I had asked Dad for help paying my final semester tuition. I needed $8,000. His response had been completely different. "Daniel, you're an adult now. You can't expect your parents to finance your life." I accepted it. I took another job. I worked weekends. I borrowed some money. And somehow, I finished my degree. But watching Dad hand Michael everything still hurt. 3 years passed. Michael graduated from law school. Dad threw him a huge party. There were dozens of guests, family friends, business partners, neighbors. Everyone was celebrating. Dad stood beside Michael and proudly announced, "My son is going to be one of the best lawyers in the state." I smiled and congratulated my brother. But something felt wrong. That night, after everyone left, my mother quietly approached me. "Daniel, don't let this bother you." "What?" "You know your father loves you." I nodded. "I know, but I didn't believe it anymore." A few months later, Michael joined a prestigious law firm. His salary was incredible. He bought a luxury apartment, then a new car, then expensive watches. I was happy for him, until one evening, I received a strange email. It came from an unknown address. The subject line said, "You deserve to know the truth." I almost deleted it, but something made me open it. There was one attachment, a PDF. I opened it, and my hands started shaking. The document was a bank statement. It showed several large transfers from my father's business account: $20,000, $35,000, $18,500, $42,000. The payments had been made over several years, but they weren't going to Michael. They were going somewhere else. A company I had never heard of. I searched the company's name, and that's when I discovered something shocking. The company was registered to Michael. I stared at the screen. Why would Dad be sending company money to Michael? Then I found another document. It was a shareholder agreement. My father's construction company had transferred ownership of a large percentage of its future profits to Michael. But there was something even more shocking. My name appeared in the agreement. I was listed as a shareholder, but I had never signed anything. Someone had forged my signature. I spent the entire night going through the documents, and slowly, the truth became clear. My father wasn't simply paying for Michael's education. He had been secretly transferring part of the family business to him. The $200,000 for law school was only the beginning. Dad was preparing Michael to inherit the company, and I was supposed to receive nothing. But why? The next morning, I called an attorney. I showed him everything. He examined the documents carefully. Then he asked, "Did you sign this?" "No." "Are you sure?" "Absolutely." He looked at me. "Then you may have a serious case." I didn't want revenge. At least, that's what I told myself. I only wanted the truth. So I called my father. "Dad, can we talk?" "Sure." I found some documents. There was silence. "What documents?" "The shareholder agreement." agreement. Another silence. Then he said, "Where did you get that?" I knew immediately. He was hiding something. That evening, I went to my parents' house. My father was sitting at the kitchen table. Michael was there too. The moment I walked in, they both looked nervous. I placed the documents on the table. "What's this?" Dad didn't answer. Michael looked at the papers. Then he looked at me. "Where did you get those? Does it matter?" Dad finally spoke. "Daniel, there's something you need to understand." I laughed. "That's funny, because I've spent my entire life trying to understand why you treated Michael differently." Dad looked away. Then he said, "Michael needed more help than you did." I couldn't believe it. He needed $200,000? He was pursuing a difficult career, and I wasn't? You had other opportunities. I stared at him. Then I asked, "Did I sign this?" He didn't answer. I asked again, "Dad, did I sign this?" Michael suddenly stood up. "Maybe you did and forgot." I looked directly at him. "No, Michael." Then I pulled out another document. I had my signature professionally examined. Michael froze. "The signature is forged." Nobody spoke. I could have immediately taken them to court, but I decided to give them one opportunity. I said, "I don't want your money." Dad looked surprised. "I want my name removed from everything you forged." Michael laughed nervously. "You're being dramatic." I looked at him. "No." Then I placed one final document on the table. "This is the audit of the company." Dad picked it up. His face changed. The person who had sent me the original documents had also sent me financial records showing that Michael had been taking money from the company. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. He had used company funds to pay for vacations, cars, and his apartment. Dad looked at Michael. "Is this true?" Michael didn't answer. "Michael," finally, he whispered. "I was going to pay it back." Dad slammed his hand against the table. "You stole from my company?" Michael started arguing, but I stood up. "I think I've heard enough." Dad looked at me. "Daniel." I stopped at the door. For the first time in my life, my father looked afraid. Not angry, not disappointed. Afraid. The investigation lasted several months. My father eventually admitted that he had known about the transfers. Michael had to repay a significant amount of money. The forged documents were canceled, and my name was removed from everything. But something unexpected happened. My father came to my apartment one evening. He looked older, tired. He sat down and said, "I made a mistake." I didn't respond. He continued, "I thought I was helping Michael. You weren't helping him." "I know. You were teaching him that he didn't have to earn anything." Dad lowered his head. Then he said, "And I treated you unfairly." I looked at him. "I needed $8,000 once." He knew exactly what I meant. "I know. You could have helped me." "Yes, but you didn't." He nodded. Then he said something I never expected. "I'm proud of you." For years, I had wanted to hear those words. But when I finally heard them, they didn't have the power they once had. Because I had already learned something important. Your worth doesn't come from your parents' approval. It comes from what you build when nobody believes in you. A year later, I opened my own consulting company. It grew faster than I expected. My father eventually retired. Michael rebuilt his career honestly and started paying back what he owed. And our family relationship slowly changed. But I never forgot that email. The email that exposed everything. I still don't know exactly who sent it. But whoever they were, they changed my life. Because sometimes revenge isn't about destroying the people who hurt you. Sometimes revenge is simply becoming so successful, so independent, and so strong that the person who once thought you were nothing finally realizes they were wrong about you all along. This story is a work of fiction created for entertainment purposes. The characters, names, places, and events are not based on any specific real person or actual incident. However, the situations and emotions portrayed in this story are inspired by real-life experiences and events that can happen in everyday life. Our stories are carefully written and presented in a realistic way to make them feel authentic, emotional, and relatable. Any resemblance to actual people or events is purely coincidental. Thank you for watching. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. See you in the next story.